Good morning, Rebels. This is Dr. Tyler here. Hi there. I wanted to communicate with you today. It's about 10 to 7 here. The team's getting here. They're getting ready for the day, and this is typically the time that I utilize to analyze x-rays. So I have an x-ray pulled up here that I wanted to share with you. But before I get to that, I think it can become very easy to, when you come in for your adjustment, and we're very efficient and we can get you in, we can get you out, back to your life. You may not think about kind of what goes into the analysis. You're only there for the actual adjustment, and you might not necessarily realize what we're doing or how we're doing it. And it's my responsibility, in my opinion, to educate you on that and to make sure that you know what the heck you're actually receiving when you're receiving an adjustment. Now, the kind of technique that we use here at Rebel is called the Gonstead Technique, and it was developed by a man of the same name, Dr. Clarence Gonstead, and he was a revolutionary individual. He totally revolutionized the way that x-rays were analyzed. He developed an entire what we call line drawing analysis that is utilized across the profession, but only typically utilized in the way that Gonstead practitioners use it, in the way that I'm going to show you here soon. So I have an x-ray pulled up. I want to show you what the lines are, what they mean, and how they change what adjustment you are receiving. So our digital system that we have here is so great. It allows us to analyze the pelvis in relatively quick fashion, at least compared to what it used to be. Back in the day when Dad opened up, he was working with plain film radiology, which requires chemicals and developer, fixer, all that kind of stuff. Now we're digital, and allows us to get even faster results. Great. So I want to make sure that the whole picture's in play there. You can see a bunch of numbers, a bunch of lines. And this right here tells us a lot of information about this individual. So what it tells us is that this hip over here, 8.5 millimeters different from this side over here. Tells us that the sacrum is tilted off to one side. Tells us that there is a physiological leg length deficiency in the amount of 5.3 millimeters on the left versus the right. Tells us that the pelvis is rotated 5.4 millimeters in this direction, and it tells us that the pelvis is tilted either forward or backward. On this side, it's rotated forward, and on this side, it's rotated backward in the amount of 5 millimeters. And so when we're analyzing this helps us to figure out exactly how we're going to be making the adjustments, and helps us to deliver the most specific adjustment. So if I were annotating this here, I'd write AS5, EX5. And that tells me that if this person were to walk in through the door, I would be adjusting this person in a very specific manner that would be reflective of this ASEX. There are, let me see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 plus different pelvic misalignments that can happen on any given person. And honestly, you as the practice member, you're not going to notice too much difference, because at the end of the day, you're just going to know that you're laying down on your side, and we're going to be adjusting this particular joint. You're going to feel my hand on your lower back, but honestly, you might not know the difference between an ASEX and on this side, which would be a PIIN. You might not even realize that I'm doing different adjustments. You're just thinking a hip is a hip. But I'm here to tell you that each one of these numbers represents a millimeter, and right here, that makes a big difference to this person in the care that they're receiving. And without an x-ray, I wouldn't know any of this. And so this is really beneficial to anyone's care. So I recommend that if anyone is seeking out chiropractic care, when you're seeking out a Gonstead chiropractor, that x-ray, man, don't balk at that. That's a really important part of your care. It gives so much information. Now, something else that is pretty interesting is right here, this area. And if you look at a lot of x-rays, you would recognize this one right off the bat. Very easy to recognize. This is called a spondylolisthesis. Spondylolisthesis. And what that means, if you break it down into Latin, it means that that vertebral segment has slipped forward on the segments below it. And typically it's resultant of some sort of trauma, maybe early on in life, maybe an athletic injury, slipping, falling down flat on their butt. Maybe they were a hockey player, something like that. That would be things that are going through my head if I see this on the x-ray. And so if I see this, the next thing that I want to look at is automatically going to be the lateral film. And lateral film just means it's the same area, but just from a different view, from the side view. And so if we take a look at this one, how this film is typically analyzed, the first thing that we do is we draw what's called, in radiology, it's known as George's line. Must have been named after a guy named George. But anyhow, you draw these lines at the very posterior or back aspect of the vertebral bodies. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that allows you to see the alignment as they look from the side view. Now, I don't care who you are. You don't have to be a chiropractor or radiologist to see that right here. Whoa. See how there's a big gap between this segment right here, the sacrum, and this segment right here, the L5? That's a big deal, because if you can imagine, the spinal cord actually is going down in this area, and it has to, and not necessarily spinal cord, but it's called the cauda equina. But the nerve roots are going down in this area, and they have to totally take a 90-degree turn and come back up in this area as they are exiting the sacrum. So that's a pretty big deal, because the nerves that are down in this area, in addition to going down the leg, and they can cause sciatica, they can cause leg pain, foot pain, numbness, foot drop, all sorts of stuff like that. These are also the nerve plexus that make up the parasympathetic nerve system, and they go out to the digestive organs that are out in this area, like the colon and even the bladder. Even parts of the small intestine are innervated all by this area. And so when I see this spondylolisthesis, that tells me that this person sustained a trauma early in life, and there's a fracture right here that can be visualized. Sometimes on the lateral film, sometimes you need to take a special angle to see it, but you can actually see this fracture right here on this person. And some other analysis that we do, 5, 4, 3, we go up to L3 and find the center of it, and we draw what's called Ferguson's weight-bearing line, and essentially it's dropping a plumb line down through L3. This should be the center of this person's, their center of gravity, and this line should line up perfectly with this right here. So if you're tracking with me, you're like, well, that's way out in front. That's not good. So for this person, it's different by 33.8 millimeters. That's a big deal. That means that this person is leaning forward constantly. Their weight bearing is centered way ahead of where their sacrum is. And that's primarily resultant of this fracture that occurred that caused their spine to slip down off of their sacrum. And that's just it's not a good situation. You don't want to have that. So for this person, what I'm going to do and what this person, how this person would be adjusted is we would adjust the sacrum right here to adjust it so in the direction of posterior to anterior. And that in turn allows the body neurologically to be aware of this area and fix the scenario as best it can. So what I can see, which I hope you can see on this video, and you can, if you really look closely, and I can probably even zoom in so you can see it better. Oops, sorry about that. So if I hit the magnifying glass and I zoom into this area, you can see that this area right here is a lot whiter, correct, than this area right here. This is called eburnation. And eburnation means that that area has been exposed to stress or trauma, and the body has laid down calcium as a compensatory mechanism to strengthen it, to bolster it. And in this fact, it actually grew what's known as an osteophyte, which if you break down that Latin means bony growth, osteophyte. And so it has grown this osteophyte underneath this L5 as best it could to try and support it. This is a very interesting structure. We don't see this all the time, but when the body knows that there's a problem, the body can try to attempt to fix it. And so this person, to give you a little bit of a history, has been receiving Gonstead Chiropractic care for their entire life. They did have a trauma. It was in 4th grade. There was an individual that pulled the chair out from underneath this person, and they fell flat on their butt, and in that moment felt very much a twinge of pain. The father of this person said that they were moving in church, like they couldn't sit still. They were a fourth grader. They couldn't really describe their experience, but they said they were just very uncomfortable. Got x-rays taken, and sure enough, that fracture had occurred, and we had a spondylolisthesis. Now, an accurate history is a very important part of chiropractic care. So that's why at Rebel, every single person, not in addition to our very in-depth paperwork, it's not one of those one-pagers. You're not going to walk in someplace and it's going to take you 10 seconds to fill out. Like, our paperwork has a purpose, and we read it and we utilize it as a tool to give you the most specific care. And so with this individual, the reason that I know so much about them is because this person is me. That's right. These are my x-rays. And when I was in fourth grade, somebody pulled the chair out from underneath me, and I fractured my L5 vertebra. And a lot of the problems that I experience on a semi-regular basis are due to that problem right there. Now, am I in pain every single day? No, absolutely not. In fact, I'm in no pain most days, and that is, I can attribute almost solely to the fact that my dad had been taking care of me my entire life leading up to that point, and since that point, this bone shelf essentially that has grown out is, in my opinion, a direct correlation to being able to adjust this area, stimulate this area, the nerve system saying this area is under a lot of stress and strain, let's lay down calcium and try to stabilize a naturally unstable condition. So although in my own spine, I have a 33.8, we call it anterior weight bearing of my Ferguson weight bearing line, I'm not dealing with a ton of pain on a regular basis, or really any pain on a regular basis. And so if this were, a person just walking in off the street, you're going to want to know this stuff, right? So if you're going somewhere and they're not taking x-rays, and maybe it's because you said, I don't want to pay for them, and they're like, well, whatever. I don't think that's right. We say in the office that we're unwilling to compromise on your health and our reputation, and that is true. Everybody gets personalized care. Everybody gets a personalized care plan to try and correct these things. And if we start seeing someone as an adult, and I will tell them, like, hey, this difference right here, like, you had an injury when you were in fourth grade. This is probably going to be pretty close to where it's going to be, but we can help you function so that you can do everything that you need to do and not be in pain all the time. So anyway, I hope that this video was of value to you. I'll do some more. But yeah, the x-rays are so valuable, and like I said, it's unique to the Gonstead system, the way that we analyze x-rays and use x-rays, and the way that we identify exactly how we're going to make the adjustments. It's all very unique to the Gonstead system. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to post them in the comments, and I'm happy to address them as I see them. Thank you.